Find a place to sit. Not at your desk, somewhere else. A couch, the floor, anywhere that isn't tied to deliverables and deadlines. Take your hands off the keyboard. Let your shoulders drop. You're not your job. But somewhere along the way, you started believing the lie that performance equals purpose, that your worth lives inside your title, that without the work you'd simply disappear. Today we're uncovering how your career persona hijacks your soul, how the mask you wore for survival slowly fused to your skin, and why success started feeling less like victory and more like suffocation. Because here's what no one tells you when your job becomes your identity. Burnout isn't just exhaustion, it's erasure. It's the slow death of the person you were before you learned to perform. And if you've been feeling that quiet dread, the sense that you're succeeding at something that's killing you, you're not broken. You're waking up. And waking up is exactly where the healing begins. 1. The high of success. The hollow inside. Carl Jung persona and identity crisis. On the surface, everything looks right. The title on your card, the steady paycheck, the quiet admiration together, they paint the picture of a life well built. You've achieved what others strive for: stability, recognition, control. But beneath that polished surface, something small keeps whispering. It speaks in quiet moments in the shower before work, in the stillness of 2 a.m., when no one's watching. It says, if you stop achieving, you'll disappear. You don't always hear it, but you feel it. The unease when a message goes unanswered. The panic when the pace slows. The strange emptiness that follows each success. What used to feel like excitement now only brings relief. Relief that you still exist in the eyes of others, that your name is still attached to something that matters, that you haven't faded into invisibility. This is the hidden bargain of the Carl Jung persona. It doesn't demand excellence. It demands that you equate excellence with worth. It teaches you that performance is proof of life, that rest is dangerous, that slowing down means losing relevance. And for a while it works. The recognition feeds you. The validation steadies your pulse. But what begins as protection eventually turns into possession. The persona is patient. It doesn't steal your life in one blow, it takes it piece by piece. First your weekends, then your energy, then your boundaries, until one day you realize it hasn't just taken your time, it's taken your aliveness. The part of you that once created for joy, not approval, that once moved freely, not strategically. Carl Jung warned of this exact moment. He wrote that when we identify completely with the persona, the mask we wear to meet the world, we lose the self behind it. The mask becomes the face. And when that happens, achievement stops expanding you. It starts suffocating you, because deep down you begin to believe that without the mask there is no you. Take Sarah, 32, a marketing manager. Brilliant, efficient, admired. Her inbox overflows with praise her campaigns always deliver. From the outside, she's the definition of control. But when the lights go out, dread seeps in. She doesn't fear losing money, she fears losing identity. Without her title, her productivity, her endless motion, she imagines herself dissolving into nothing. She's mistaken performance for presence. This is the first sign Jung described success without aliveness. A silent identity crisis that hides behind competence. You keep functioning, keep delivering, but inside you're gone. You check every box the world handed you, but there's no pulse beneath the perfection. You've built a life that looks full, yet feels hollow. The persona was never meant to trap you. It was meant to translate you a bridge between your inner world and the outer one. But somewhere the bridge became a wall. You forgot that the mask is a tool, not a home, and now the silence behind your success feels heavier than failure ever did. To begin finding your way back, you don't need to destroy what you've built. You need to learn how to breathe inside it again. Here's how to start: pause before you perform. Each time you feel the urge to prove, stop and ask, what am I afraid will happen if I don't? That question interrupts the reflex to perform and invites awareness back in. Separate the voice of fear from the voice of purpose. One whispers, keep running or you'll vanish. The other reminds you, slow down, you're still here. Learn to tell them apart. Only one leads you home. Reclaim small moments of useless joy. Do something that earns no praise, no measurable outcome. Cook for no reason. Read poetry that teaches nothing. Let yourself exist without proof. Name the mask. Say out loud which role has taken over: the achiever, the responsible one, the reliable fixer. Naming it gives you distance from it. It turns the mask from identity into object. Because success should never feel like suffocation. You were never meant to disappear inside your competence. You are not the mask, you are the consciousness behind it. And the work now is not to throw it away, but to loosen it gently, patiently, until you remember the face that existed long before the performance began. That's the work of every awakening soul in workplace psychology. To remember that who you are is not what you produce. The persona may have served you, but it's time for you to breathe as the one who wears it, not the one lost beneath it. 2. When the role starts to eat you alive. The Carl Jung persona in modern work. The Carl Jung persona never enters as an enemy. It arrives quietly, disguised as a solution. In a world that judges before you finish a sentence, in offices ruled by workplace psychology where competence equals safety, the mask feels like protection. You learn which tone earns respect, which smile earns trust, which version of you gets promoted. Piece by piece, the armor forms polished, strategic, and necessary until you can move through difficult spaces without bleeding. But armor has its own cruel law. The longer you wear it, the heavier it becomes. What began as self-presentation slowly turns to stone. The edges between who you are and who you perform blur. You stop putting the mask on each morning because you wake up already wearing it. And after a while, you can't tell where the performance ends and where the person begins. It doesn't collapse all at once. The signs sneak in dressed as virtue. You start mistaking overwork for purpose. You can't rest without guilt. Stillness feels like betrayal. Empty space makes you uneasy, so you fill it with meetings, messages, and motion. You've trained your nervous system to believe that stillness equals danger, that worth must be earned through constant output. Then comes the quiet numbness. Not drama, just a gradual fading. Conversations sound rehearsed. Joy stops landing. You celebrate wins but feel disconnected, as if you're watching your own life from a distance. When others share good news, you smile appropriately, but inside there's only static. And when the world finally quiets down, guilt arrives to take its place. A Saturday without plans feels wrong, almost dangerous. Vacation days go unused because rest feels like weakness. Beneath it all hides a deeper fear, an ego attachment so strong it whispers, if you stop producing, proving, or performing, you'll disappear. That's when you know the line has been crossed. The mask that once helped you survive has become your captor. The Carl Jung persona has turned from bridge to cage. Identity crisis and the price of perfection. A lesson in workplace psychology. There's a story from Psychology Today 2023 about a consultant who built her entire sense of worth around excellence. Her work became her identity until the company downsized. The decision wasn't personal, it was structural. Yet the loss broke her open. Despite solid savings and new offers, she couldn't move, couldn't return calls, couldn't imagine a future. Because what she lost wasn't a job, it was her proof of existence. Carl Jung captured this perfectly. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. Her layoff wasn't punishment, it was an inner collapse made visible. A psychological intervention disguised as failure. Her external world fell apart so that her inner truth could finally surface. What looked like an ending was actually an exit, the only way her real self could breathe again. This is the essence of an identity crisis, when the structures you built to feel safe begin to suffocate you. When success stops feeling like fulfillment and starts feeling like exile. How to loosen the ego. Attachment and reclaim the self. But here's the trap's brilliance: you can't simply wake up and decide to stop performing. The Carl Jung persona isn't a jacket you take off. It's woven into your reflexes, your relationships, your sense of belonging. It lives in your nervous system. That's why the path back isn't rebellion, it's awareness. Here's how to begin. Change your language. For 1 week, introduce yourself without mentioning your title or job. Say only your name. Notice how your body reacts to the silence that follows. Stay with the silence. Feel the tension that rises when you don't fill it with credentials. The voice that whispers, "You're not enough without your achievements," is your ego attachment trying to protect you. Name what you feel. The discomfort in your chest, the unease in your gut. It's not failure. It's your authentic self stirring, asking to be seen again. Listen before you fix. Don't drown the discomfort in productivity. Sit with it. Let it speak. It's showing you where your worth got tangled with your work. This isn't about quitting your job or rejecting ambition. It's about remembering who you are beneath the performance. Because the truth is sacred and simple, you were never meant to disappear behind your achievements. You were meant to live from something quieter, steadier, something that doesn't need applause to prove it's real. And that's the wisdom at the heart of the Carl Jung persona, a reminder that you're not the mask you built to survive. You're the consciousness behind it, finally ready to live as your whole self. 2. The gentle surgery. How to remove the mask safely. Carl Jung persona and ego attachment. The moment you finally see the trap, your first instinct is to escape completely, to quit the job, delete your professional identity, disappear somewhere no one knows your name or your resume. After years of performing that fantasy, feels like freedom, the only honest response to the exhaustion of pretending. But that isn't healing. That's destruction. And Jung knew the difference. You don't need to burn down your life. You need a gentler kind of transformation, one that removes what's hardened without killing what's still alive. Because the truth is, some part of your Carl Jung persona still serves you. It helps you communicate, build trust, and navigate complex systems. The problem isn't that it exists, it's that somewhere along the way the servant became the master. So we begin not with rebellion, but with precision. Step 1. Identify the invisible contracts. Ego, attachment, awareness. The first step is seeing the silent rules you've been obeying without realizing it. These unspoken contracts run your life like background code, whispering, "I must always deliver no matter the cost." Rest is weakness. Productivity proves my worth. If I'm not helping, I'm failing. Saying no means I'm letting people down. My suffering is the price of success. Write them down. Every single one. Especially the ones that make your stomach tighten. You're not judging yourself. You're simply turning on the light in a dark room. Because what you can't see will keep owning you. Step 2. Rewrite them consciously. The psychology of reprogramming. You're not rejecting the persona, you're rewriting its script. Ask yourself, did I choose this belief or did I inherit it? Then craft a version that honors both your humanity and your wholeness. I must always deliver becomes, I deliver within boundaries that keep me alive. Rest is weakness becomes rest sustains what I value most. If I'm not helpful, I'm not valuable becomes my worth is not measured by usefulness. This isn't positive thinking. It's authorship. You're reclaiming the pen from fear. The old contracts were written by survival, by wounds, expectations, and a culture that profits from your exhaustion. The new ones are written by yourself, the part that wants to stay alive while still contributing. Step 3. Reconnect with what feels alive, healing the identity crisis. This is where most high achievers struggle. You've lived so long inside metrics that you've forgotten how to exist outside of them. Every action must justify itself. Every hobby must lead somewhere. But healing doesn't come from efficiency. It comes from aliveness. From doing things that serve no purpose other than to remind you you're still human. Find something that exists beyond performance. Cook a meal no one asked for. Draw badly. Walk aimlessly. Sit on a park bench for 20 minutes without your phone. Read something that teaches you nothing practical. It's not about the task. It's about breathing in a space where nothing is required of you. Because only in that uselessness does your soul begin to move again. There's a story Jung once told a banker who broke down after yet another promotion. The success that should have brought pride instead triggered collapse. Jung didn't tell him to chase new goals or think positively. He told him to paint badly, without purpose, without skill. At first, the man resisted. It felt childish, unproductive. But slowly, something inside him began to thaw. Through creating something useless but true, he began to feel alive again. Because healing isn't rebellion against success, it's reorientation toward meaning. It's remembering that you are not a machine built for output. You are a living being who needs beauty, stillness, and presence to remain whole. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not the version others applaud, not the one tied to metrics and milestones. The real you beneath the resume, beneath the mask, beneath the noise." The Carl Jung persona isn't evil. It did its job. It protected you when you were fragile, helped you survive systems that reward masks and punish sensitivity. But now it's time to teach it its place again, to let it serve, not lead. Step 4. Practice the 1-minute ritual. Workplace psychology for reconnection. At the end of each workday, take 1 minute, just 60 seconds, to unmask consciously. Step away from your screen. Take 3 slow breaths, not shallow performative breaths, but real ones. Let your chest expand. Let your shoulders drop. Whisper to yourself, "I am not my to-do list." Notice how uncomfortable that feels. The part of you that panics, the one that equates stillness with failure, that's the persona defending itself. Don't fight it. Just breathe again and repeat, "I am not my to-do list." It takes only 1 minute, but in that minute your nervous system learns something new. You still exist even when you're not performing. Pause. Breathe. You don't have to fix your entire life tonight. You don't have to know what's next. Just feel what's real, the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet proof that you're still here, even when no one's watching. But be ready for what follows, because once you start peeling the mask away, a strange panic appears, the fear of open space. After years of filling every moment, that space feels like emptiness. But that emptiness isn't absence. It's possibility. It's the room yourself needs to come home. And that's how the Carl Jung persona, once your armor, becomes your teacher again. When you stop letting ego attachment drive you and start letting presence lead you, discover that freedom doesn't come from burning everything down. It comes from breathing into what remains and finally remembering who you are beneath the performance. 4. The free fall. Why letting go feels like dying. Carl Jung, persona and identity crisis. After years of performing, silence can feel unbearable. You finally clear space in your schedule, real intentional emptiness, and within minutes, your body starts to rebel. The quiet doesn't feel peaceful. It feels dangerous, like stepping off solid ground. Your hands instinctively reach for your phone. Your mind starts inventing reasons to move emails that suddenly can't wait, people who might need you, tasks that feel urgent but weren't 5 minutes ago. Anything to fill the void. Anything to prove that you still matter. This is where most people relapse. Not because they're weak, but because stillness feels too much like failure. Your nervous system, conditioned by years of survival through performance, interprets rest as threat. You've lived so long inside motion that stopping feels like dying. So you go back to work, to noise, to whatever makes you feel productive. Not because you want to, but because it's the only thing that still feels safe. In Carl Jung persona theory, this stage has a name: nigredo, the blackening. In alchemy, it's the moment when base material burns to ash before it can become gold. In psychology, it's the dark night of the soul, the death of the false self before something true can emerge. You're not broken, you're transforming. But from the inside, metamorphosis feels like disintegration. There's a case in Harvard Business Review 2022. A woman left her corporate job burned out, disillusioned, ready to live differently. She launched a wellness brand, something aligned with her values. She told herself this time would be different. But within months, she was back to 16-hour days chasing goals, measuring her worth by numbers. She hadn't escaped the mask, she'd just changed its costume. The contract was the same: you are what you produce. That's the trap within the trap. The persona doesn't disappear when you quit. It adapts. It hides behind authenticity, behind purpose, behind doing good. It can speak the language of freedom while still operating on fear. This is where identity crisis deepens. Because when the mask feels natural, you confuse performance with purpose. You think you've changed, but the ego attachment remains. You're still performing just under a prettier disguise. Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Because facing your soul means meeting the void. It means sitting in the space where your old identity has died and resisting the urge to replace it with another performance. But the void isn't punishment. It's a womb. It's the quiet space where something genuine starts to take root. The problem is your body wired by workplace psychology to associate stillness with danger, mistakes, rebirth for annihilation. So when the panic comes, and it will, don't fill the silence. Don't reach for your phone. Don't open the laptop. Don't rush to fix it. Instead, meet the moment with awareness. Step 1. Name it. Say, "I feel anxious." Not "I'm failing," not "I'm wasting time." Those two sentences live in different worlds. "I'm failing" fuses you with the feeling. It turns anxiety into identity. "I feel anxious" creates space. It allows you to observe what's happening without becoming it. Step 2. Ask what it needs. Ask softly, without interrogation. What does this part of me need right now? Maybe it needs reassurance that you still exist even when you're not performing. Maybe it needs gentle movement, a walk, not a workout. Maybe it just needs your hand over your heart, reminding you that you're still here, still breathing, still whole. Step 3. Stay, don't fix. Don't make it a productivity exercise. Don't rush to fix the stillness. Just stay with it. Feel it. Let the anxiety rise, peak, and soften. Your nervous system is learning a new truth, that peace doesn't kill you. Because if you can sit in that silence, if you can stay in the free fall without grabbing the old ropes, something sacred begins to return. And what returns isn't the old identity you lost. It's the part of you that never needed an identity to exist in the first place. 5. Turning work back into soul. Carl Jung persona and the return of authentic vocation. Work was never the enemy. It never set out to destroy you. The real danger was forgetting who you are inside it, the moment you mistook your job for your identity, your paycheck for your value, and the applause for proof that you're still alive. True vocation doesn't come from validation or achievement. It begins the moment you stop performing for approval and start acting from devotion. Not devotion to success or recognition, but to what feels real and alive in you, even if no one sees it, even if it never trends, even if it doesn't fit neatly on a resume. This is the transformation Carl Jung persona theory points toward when your work begins to flow from the self instead of the mask. Work stops being performance and becomes expression. You're no longer trying to become someone, you're finally allowing what's already true within you to take form in the world. The persona doesn't disappear in this process. It matures. A conscious persona becomes a healthy boundary, a translation layer between your inner world and outer life. It helps you communicate, collaborate, and move through complexity. But it no longer pretends to define you. It remembers its place, a useful mask you can wear and remove at will, not a shell you mistake for your skin. There was once a manager who spent years leading through performance. She projected strength when she was exhausted, confidence when she was unsure, motivation when her heart was empty. By every external measure, she succeeded: promotions, recognition, results. And yet, piece by piece, something inside her was fading. After a breakdown forced her to stop, she slowly returned, but this time she led differently. She didn't lead from performance, she led from presence. She allowed herself to be human. She admitted when she didn't know. She asked for help when she needed it. She spoke with empathy, not because it looked good in workplace psychology handbooks, but because she had finally met her own vulnerability without shame. Her team didn't crumble, they flourished. Because people don't need flawless leaders. They need whole ones. And for the first time in years, she felt alive again. Not the frantic energy of overwork, but the quiet, steady vitality that comes from living truthfully. Jung understood this alchemy. He wrote that work done in service of the self becomes vocation, not work done to prove you matter, not work done to outrun emptiness, but work that flows naturally from your center. The place where your real gifts meet the world's real needs without demanding that you abandon yourself in the process. When you approach work consciously, it stops being a grind and becomes something sacred. Not mystical, but deeply human. Every task becomes an act of participation in creation. It becomes ritual, not because it's perfect, but because it's done with presence, care, and reverence for what's unfolding through you. Before any meaningful task, whether it's a project, a conversation, or a decision that matters, pause. Take 3 slow breaths. Let your attention return to your body. Then ask yourself, am I doing this to prove or to express? If you're doing it to prove, to earn worth, to chase approval, to avoid invisibility, step back. Not forever, just long enough to feel what's driving you. Notice the tension beneath the urgency. Ask softly, is this mine, or am I performing someone else's expectations? If you're doing it to express, to bring something genuine into the world, to serve through your true gifts, to contribute rather than escape, then proceed. Not from pressure, but from presence. That single question changes everything, because the moment your work becomes expression rather than performance, something subtle yet profound happens. You stop chasing belonging. And instead, belonging begins to find you quietly, naturally, in the very place where you're finally being yourself. This is how the Carl Jung persona transforms from an unconscious mask that traps you into a conscious tool that protects what's real. The ego softens. The ego attachment loosens. And for the first time, work stops being a stage and becomes a mirror for your soul. 6. The return work is what you do, not who you are. Carl Jung Persona and Identity Renewal. The goal was never to destroy the Carl Jung persona. It was never about rejecting ambition or walking away from success. The real work is reclaiming authorship, remembering that you are the writer of the story, not the character trapped inside it. Your title can stay. Your goals can stay. Your drive to build, lead, and create doesn't need to vanish. But something essential must shift. The title now serves your truth. It no longer defines it. The work flows from your presence, not through your absence. That's what real success looks like. It's not the noise of applause, it's the quiet of alignment. It's achieving without losing yourself. Creating without craving validation. Resting without guilt. Being enough even when no one is watching. When that happens, the mask begins to soften. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a conscious tool, not a cage. You wear it when the world requires it, and you take it off when the day ends. It protects you, but it no longer possesses you. You walk into work with a new kind of clarity. You know this is a role, not your entire identity. You lead, present, deliver, and then you go home and remember the person underneath it all. The one who exists beyond deadlines, performance reviews, and numbers. The one who existed before the first paycheck and will remain long after the last. This shift isn't about doing less, it's about doing from a different place. From wholeness, not fear. From intention, not pressure. When your actions rise from this space, your work still carries excellence, but without the exhaustion. It doesn't drain you. It expresses you. People around you will notice even if they can't explain it. You'll seem steadier, more grounded. You'll stop rushing to prove yourself. You'll say no when it's true, and yes when it's aligned. You'll stop treating every email like an emergency because you finally understand urgency is not importance. Some will misunderstand. Others might feel uneasy because your boundaries will quietly reflect the places they've lost theirs. But a few, the ones who've been waiting for permission to stop performing, will exhale when they see you. They'll recognize freedom in your steadiness. And through your presence, something in them will begin to unlock. You become proof that another way to succeed exists, one that doesn't cost your soul. And here's the mantra that anchors you in that truth. I am the one behind the title. Say it out loud. Whisper it if you need to. Let it echo in your chest. Not defined by it. Not dissolved into it. The one behind it, the consciousness that wears the role but is never consumed by it. Let this sentence become your act of remembrance. Use it to return to yourself whenever you start drifting toward performance. And tonight, before you close your laptop, pause. Take 1 minute, 60 seconds. Move your hands away from the keyboard. Take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Let your shoulders drop. Let a small, genuine smile rise, even if it feels unfamiliar. Then say it quietly like a truth coming home. Work is what I do, not who I am. You existed long before this job. You'll exist long after it. And the part of you that is most alive, most real, most worth protecting has been waiting patiently for you to remember that it's still here. Because this is the ultimate evolution of the Carl Jung persona, when the role no longer swallows the self, but serves it. You no longer live to perform, you live to be whole.